Welcome to Learning the Tarot. Here we are for the Ten of Swords. So with the swords, I haven't really felt like there was much of a journey like we had with the wands until those last three. And the thing is I do my notes. And even though it looks like I've just, hit record 3 times for the last 3 videos if you're watching them in order, I haven't. I take breaks, I record, and then I go get my notes ready and I do other things and then I come back to record. I do them in bulk. I did I think I did 3 today. And so that's just part of my routine of things. And I've realized these 3, 8, 9, and 10 of Swords tell a story. And I don't know, it's probably not going to continue. Let's just be real with the next 4, because the royal dudes are just their own thing. But for this, it really has told a tale. So, and I didn't recognize it at first. I kind of mentioned it last time, but really, these 3 are the underworld journey. And so if you haven't heard of that, I'm going to give you the briefest of examples. So how it goes is that in an underworld experience, what happens is that a dark goddess of some sort, so typically, I don't know, maybe Hades could take you down for a wild ride in the underworld. You don't know. But typically it's going to be like the Morrigan who's going to come and be like, listen, we're going to go on a magical journey. What happens is initially you're just minding your business and then shadows start to pop up and things you need to deal with. And that's the signs that you're getting close to the underworld. And then you can gracefully walk with the dark goddess, whoever it would be. We're going to stick with the Morrigan. So the Morrigan would be like, okay, you can come with me willingly or I'm going to drag you kicking and screaming down. The choice is yours. And, pick your choice. If you go willingly, it sucks, but it's not as bad. Versus her hauling you kicking and screaming, and all of that metaphor happens in your life. Things are going to feel chaotic. It's going to feel like you're out of control, that nothing's going your way, everything's just terrible and awful and horrible. And then eventually you're going to hit the bottom, which is the underworld, and that's where you have to deal with everything. And it's down there that it honestly sometimes will feel like you are stripped down to being just a skeleton. And you have to rebuild the rest of the way. Because it really makes you analyze all aspects of yourself, all aspects of your personality, your mindsets, your beliefs, every perception that you have of your life, you have to evaluate. And that's where you have that journey with the dark goddess. You're down there with her dealing with your stuff. And then you have the up and leaving of the underworld. And in that upwards happenings, what you took down with you, you cannot bring back up. So think about you had a backpack full of trauma and chaos and you're like, I'm gonna continue with these. No. And so you still have to do the work. You might have recognized your issues and worked through some of it, but you can't go back out until you've dealt with it really. And it's not to say you'll be completely healed, but definitely there is a thing specifically usually that you need to work through in an underworld experience. And usually the upwards leaving is where you're still trying to cling to stuff and just have last little bits to deal with before you're completely out. And if we're looking at the swords, the 8 is the getting dragged down, willingly or by your hair, getting down to the underworld. 9 is in the underworld. 10, the card we're on now, is the leaving of the underworld. Because this is supposed to be a cycle, and it's the death and rebirth card, and I'm like, that's exactly what the underworld journey is all about. So yeah, you are leaving this, obviously. And again, it's you're getting towards the new healed version of yourself, but you're not quite there yet. You're doing that last little bit. You're not out of the underworld, but you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Now, with the card reversed, Idiot's Guide to the Tarot was arguing it's the equivalent with my analogy that you're out of the underworld. Everything's great, everything's fine, you've dealt with it, you're good, you're great, ah. I personally was more on board with what the Modern Witchcraft Guide to the Tarot was saying. And again, going with the same example, she describes it as you're stalling. And I'm like, yep, this is when you're I'm not gonna give this up, I'm still taking my bag with me. And it's no, you can't take it with you. And you've stopped. Or you're at the underworld and you're no, I'm not going to deal with anything, and you're just sitting there pouting like a toddler. And you're just no, I'm not going to deal with any of this. Absolutely not. And you're just throwing a fit. And that's kind of what this card reversed feels like. You're refusing to do the work. You refuse to admit that you have a victim mentality. You're refusing to acknowledge the shadows that are being brought up. You refuse to admit that you're in the underworld. You're like, absolutely not. Everything's fine. And you're just in this state of total and absolute denial. And the Modern Witchcraft Guide mentioned this one, and I think it's perfect. And it's that you need to take action and stop making excuses. And basically, staying put is going to get you nowhere. You need to actually start doing something about it. And so again, the cards, honestly, they feel like they need to be separate, because you could easily have the reversed of this card and then the upright, where it's like you're feeling stalled, but in the future you're gonna actually deal with it. And maybe that's the point in some of these cards, is that, remember how we talked about how you have the power to change the card from the upright to the reversed? That kind of feels like what this card is saying. Like, if it's reversed and you're sitting there stalled and you're not doing anything and you're just like in this denial phase, you can eventually acknowledge that you need to take action, and then the taking action could easily be this card in the upright position. But of course it could also still be going backwards into the 9. Like, if you're in such hardcore denial, like, you could easily move into the 9 and like need to contend with what's going on in reality, and then move into this card in the upright position. Like, again, I almost am getting to this point where I feel like you need to use multiple decks per reading, because like you need the options to be there for what you're doing. Of course, if you're doing magic with it, it'd be fine, because you could use the card multiple times over. But like, if it's just for a reading, you know, a little difficult to have, like, what would the other meanings be, you know? Because like each one really has its own distinct meaning. Like, it's just one of those where it's like, sometimes I feel like you need multiples to have options, you know? So anyways, this is a little bit of a shorter one, but I feel like it was more concise than some of them. Because like, some of these swords have been rough. Like the Two of Swords, still confused. Maybe that's the point of that card, it's the confusion card. The last 3 though, these have been easy, these have been great. I know exactly what they're talking about. So I'm hoping the court cards are gonna go just as well. So anyways, I'd love to hear your interpretations of this card in the comments down below. Huge thank you to my patrons. I'll have their names here on the screen. If you'd like to support me, get access to exclusive content, it is patreon.com/nightwillowcrafts. Make sure to like and subscribe. I post every single day, and until next time, thank you so much for watching, and blessed be.